What's up guys, it's Joe from GGD and I'm here today to do a little walkthrough of the project for my Modern and Massive 2 playthrough track. It's kind of like a, I don't know, I guess modern prog metal. It's got sort of different subgenres of metal going on, I guess. And I'll walk you through it all, but in case you haven't heard it, I thought I'd just play it. Now this is just the writing session. Nolly mixed the stems of this for the actual playthrough. So what you'll hear here isn't a finished mix by any stretch, but I'll play it through. It's just kind of like I've set the levels where I wanted them when I was writing it so I could hear the bits that I wanted to hear roughly in the right sort of spaces. But yeah, you'll get the idea. So, quite a bit going on. Let's start with Modern and Massive 2, I guess. It's using the heavy thwacky mix preset, and this is the same preset that Nolly used in the final mix. So we've got the Q Drumco plate brass snare with the Tama Star Classic toms as a entire set, the Q copper kick, and then cymbals wise, I believe it's all the Zildjians. Dun dun dun. Apart from the hi-hats, which are the Istanbuls. So if you've got the plugin, obviously you can check out the mix that's going on here. This walkthrough isn't really like a mix walkthrough because, as I said, Nolly mixed the final track. Any kind of processing I've got going on here is either just so I can hear it in the track in playback, or because there's like sound designy elements going on, which I can get into. On the drums in this session, I don't think Nolly used this, but I put Orion by Cradle. This is like a drum channel thing, and it's amazing. I love what it does. It just brings everything together and gives everything some volume. And when I'm writing, I want to be able to hear things easily without having to try and do clever EQ moves on everything to make everything sit well. So more volume equals louder, which means I can hear it more. So I love that. Obviously, it's more nuanced than that, but I find it's great to just getting sort of mix ready channel bus stuff going on. So I guess let's do the section by section. So this kind of intro section, I saw some comments on YouTube saying it reminded them of like 2000s In Flames, and that is correct because that was my exact inspiration for it. I think I was really struggling to know what to do for the first riff. I kind of had a bunch of different ideas before this one, and I was laying in bed one time not being able to sleep, and I was thinking about Come Clarity and how much of a banger that song is, and then started listening to In Flames again, that sort of Come Clarity era, and then I wrote this riff. So it's a simple riff. Pretty simple, pretty powerful. I'll show you what the tones are. Which is a Dingwall NG2 4-string. This is in drop C, this song. I'm just using parallax for this. As I said, I sent the stems to Nolly. I think I took everything off the bass for this. This was like, I've been using Nolly bass so much since it came out that this is one of the first times I'd actually recorded real bass in a really long time. And it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. And that's kind of where this bass bridge came from, because I was just enjoying noodling around on a real bass. So it was really fun to bring my basses out and actually track using it. I find when I'm like programming MIDI versus when I'm actually playing an instrument, I can come up with different ideas sometimes. So it's nice to switch it up, I think. Guitars, I'm just using my Jackson USA Misha 6-string. I'm just using Archetype Nolly X. Yeah, I don't think I'll get too much into what all the tones are coming from if it's not like a sound designing thing. So yeah, I had that sort of cool drum part with the cool riff. And then following down the kind of road of In Flames, I had to put some kind of lead on it, which is where this lead came in. And then I thought, that's really cool. Let's layer it with some synths and stuff. So I made this blend of synths. I mean, the strings isn't a synth, but it all comes together to create like one kind of synth sound. I thought it was kind of Children of Bodom-esque actually, but breaking that down, we've got Serum 2. Which is just this hypersaw patch I found, which was really cool. And then I layered that with this, which I thought was very Children of Bodom, which I even called it Children of Bodom synth, which is again is Serum 2 with this Heaven Grains patch. And then layered that with some staccato strings, which is using Audio Imperia Nucleus Light for this. Nucleus. So you can see how that all kind of stacks on top of each other nicely. This very much kind of creates one cohesive sound. You know, they're all playing the same octaves, so they're going to naturally blend together. But I thought each layer plays a different part in creating some kind of space or presence in some way. And I was really happy with how that section turned out, actually. Not something I normally write. It's quite like cheesy is the wrong word, but there's an aspect of it which is a bit like cheesy. I don't know how to describe it. But I kind of like that for this. I thought it was cool and something I don't really normally write. So I sort of embraced it. And then the only other thing going on here is the boomer, which is what it is it not? So then we've got this cool drum fill transition. Let's just listen to that fill by itself. Which is just this cool little doozy that I programmed. Pretty cute. And then I layered it with this fuzz guitar sort of transition thing. And that's just archetype going into this Facturator by Kilohertz, which is just this kind of cool drive fuzz module. Also providing a lot of width there, which was nice using the stereo turbo thing. I think when I was writing it, this one side and another guitar playing something different another side, but I thought it was needlessly complex. So I tried taking it out and just putting a stereo widener on it with some fuzz, and it did the job. That's something I've tried to do more of in the recent sort of years of writing is if something doesn't need to be there, don't put it in. I think it's easy to keep adding. It's harder to find the moment at which you should stop. And I think it's easier to find that actually by overwriting, overlayering, and then going back through and just muting sections, muting instruments and like saying, is this really losing something, or actually has taking this out provided some clarity and space for the other things I've put in already to shine out more? So that's something to have a little go at when you're writing, because I've found that to be very useful. Then the next section, no specific inspiration for this necessarily, but it carries on naturally thematically, I guess, from the previous section, and it just seemed to flow well. So not much thought or inspiration into this section, just what felt right. So let's break this down. Drums, bass, and guitars sound like this by themselves. So you can see here, actually, getting a bit of a sneaky peek at my process and seeing how much of a bad guitarist I am because I have to punch all this in. These are different takes. So I punched these sections in. I was trying to do it all in one take, and I could do it, but it was sloppy. It wasn't as clean as I wanted it to be, which meant it didn't sound as punchy and polished. So I thought, screw it, I'm just going to punch it in. And doing so created a much cleaner production and a much better guitar take. So glad I did that. Took some time, but it was worth it for sure. The guitars are playing essentially the same thing with one exception. The left guitar is playing these higher chords. Bit under oathy actually. And then the right guitar is playing the same notes, but it's breaking the chord up into an arpeggio. Compared to yeah, so not super obvious when you listen to it all together, but I thought doing it this way, I thought I was gonna match the arpeggios on both sides, but after I finished the right side, I listened to it and thought it created like some cool rhythmic texture and widened the guitars slightly to my ears, actually. And it just created a bit of difference there. And I really like that, putting it all together. So once I'd done that, classic trick here actually of the bass, like first half is just the accents of the palm mutes on the guitars, and then a little fill here, dun 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 dun, into filling out the bass so there's notes going on all the time. Easy way to create some momentum through a section is just some variation in what the bass is playing, dropping out, letting the chords shine through, and then on the second half supporting those chords to create a thicker sound. Not terribly clean, I've got to say, but is what it is. And then for this lead sound, pretty stereotypical kind of like chorusy, washy lead sound. But I tried some new things on this and really liked the result. Let's start with Archetype Nolly, which is second in the chain here. Nothing crazy going on. It's just like a normal rhythm patch. But what I did was put this pre-delay on, so it's feeding delay into the amp. Really cool sound that I overuse because it's nice. I put a chorus before this, which might be a little weird. And it created some nice little modulation. Pretty subtle, but it creates this kind of nice breakup on the sound, which I liked. And then the star of this sound is this plugin called Super VHS by Baby Audio. And this thing is taking it from this to so it's this really cool, like, well, it's the kind of classic sound of that era in terms of like the chorus and washiness. I'm not sure how to describe it apart from that, but the key is this magic button. Oops. Yeah, and I use that all over this project. Sounds really cool. And then just bringing back in those synths from the beginning to create some ties back to the previous section. So, next section. I really like this chorus. And like it's nothing crazy special, but it's a progression I haven't knowingly used before. I had previously written a chorus which I found boring because it was using a progression which I'd used a bunch in the past. It's what came to me naturally. It's what I heard first, but I found it boring, so I deleted it. And that's something I thought could be a little cool to touch on here is just because something felt natural or came to you first doesn't mean it's the best for the song. And that's something I've slipped into a lot in the past is thinking, well, if this is what has come to me naturally and I heard first, surely that means it must be like what's most natural for the song because it's what's naturally come to me. It's what I heard. But I think sometimes actually just taking a moment's breath, stepping back and trying some different ideas can lead to new and different outcomes which I find really exciting because I often beat myself up about writing stuff that sounds very similar. So finding new ways to do things or new chord progressions or something that sounds fresh to my ears, maybe not to others, but at least to my ears in terms of my compositions, I find nothing more exciting than that personally. So I was really stoked on this. This was like the third chorus I tried here. And yeah, I'm really, really happy with it. The first time I demoed it, I hadn't put this lead in. So it was sounding like this. And I thought that sounded fine. But then I showed it to my good friend Dan, and he and Misha actually said, it's really cool, but you should layer that string section with a guitar. So I did, which sounds like... Each time it goes through, it shifts slightly, which was something I really liked. I quantized the heck out of that because it was something I was struggling to record, but whatever. It sounds good because I wanted it to be really tight and locking in. Here, using the Children of Bodom synth to mimic the string and guitar lead. Just copied it over. Lead-wise, so same notes, just got this fuzz, which is that Faturator plugin, an octave below. And yeah, one thing Nolly said when I sent it over to him, I feel bad for Nolly. This one isn't too bad. There's only 22 tracks, but sometimes the mixes I've sent to him have had like 50, and I'm like, dude, I'm really sorry. And he's always just met me with nothing but grace and love. But he was like, yeah, there's a lot of lead parts in this one. I've done my best to balance them, and he did a killer job. I love what he did when he mixed this. But there is a lot of lead parts going on. You could call any of these 5 layers a lead. Similarly here, 4 layers. And don't even get me started on that next section, but we'll get to that. Let's just listen to the bass, guitar, and drums. So you can see here, there's like different regions going on, and these are different takes again. But what I did was actually I tuned, each take is a different chord, right? And if you watch along, you can see where those kick in. And the reason that's the case is because I tuned each of these chords individually to make sure they were perfectly in tune. A massive pain to do, but this is dense, and I wanted it all to feel really, I wanted there to be a lot of clarity in it. I wanted the chords to really ring out and sound pure and open and impactful. And to do that, I decided to tune them all individually. What do I mean by that? I mean, so say like if I'm, playing like this isn't one of them, but a more extended chord of some sort. Before I tracked that chord, I would then open up, archetype Nolly, go through each note individually and make sure it's in tune. some of the Puritans out there may think that's disgusting and evil and impure. But sorry, it sounds better sometimes. And I really wanted this to be like big and open. And I find if you don't go and do that, just the way guitars are built, the intonation and whatnot, you get little variations in tuning depending on where you're playing and, you know, on the guitar setup and stuff. It can lead to a muddier sonic landscape. And notes can be a little bit more muddled together. And I really wanted this to be like angelic and open and when you hear it. So tuning each chord individually got me there. And I love how in tune it sounds. I think you can really hear that. I don't have the original takes, otherwise I'd show you the difference. I've actually done a video on this for GGD already, which you can find on the YouTube channel, and I show the difference there. Yeah, I just love how just open it sounds, and everything just sounds nice and in tune. Then this next section, which is kind of like a more like pleiny, proggy kind of fusion section, which I guess would be like the pre-chorus or something, I don't know. A bridge, probably the bridge. So this bass sound is quite sort of distinct. And what I used here, I believe, yeah, it's the Corey Wong Neural DSP plugin. And I used this compressor and more vitally the spring. Is that chorus? I can't remember. We've got a reverb and yeah, chorus. Which gives it that distinct sort of fusion bass lead sound. And I really like that for this. For this kind of jazzy ride thing going on, I actually recorded it in pressing it on my MIDI keyboard, and then went through and quantized it and edited it. But I've been doing that more when programming drums, is using my MIDI keyboard. It's quick just to get a kick and snare pattern in. But if you're trying to make like a really natural kind of ride pattern or cymbal pattern or something, I find, playing it in on a keyboard is a really great way to do that. Taking advantage of the really expansive velocity range of Modern Massive 2 here, using, that's 28 and then 77 on kick to create some really nice little subtle ghost notes, going down to sort of 55 on the ride. 53 there. Just sounds so good, man. Oops, come back. So we've got some piano here, which I believe is this alt piano by Westwood Instruments, and they're a company I've gotten into recently. And they make some really stunning sounding VSTs. We've got this felt bit you can pull up, which is just stunning. I love that piano. Layering it with a choir pad thing. Can't remember what instrument this is. Oh, it's their other instrument called alt choir. so beautiful. And then just a bass synth to kind of, because I've got the bass doing essentially a lead part, I wanted something lower down to give some anchor. And that's Cradle's State Machine Slow Drift, which is a really cool plugin. Probably one of the more sort of naked sections of this song, but came together really well, I think. And then this final section, it couldn't be a Joe Hamilton playthrough if there wasn't blast beats. I'm pretty sure Deaf Heaven had just brought out one of the singles for their latest album before I started writing this section, so this is kind of my Deaf Heaven worship section. And then I started layering it up. And then, yeah, out of the blast beats into like a halftime thing to bring out some space, make it feel even more epic. Got the piano coming in, mimicking that Children of Bodom synth. And then, crucially, this choir part, which I adore the sound of. And for this, I used Omnisphere. I just wanted more of a classic choir in a church sound. And that combined with, you know, the root notes going on, the anchors, the counterpoints in all the leads, I think it sounds really beautiful. And then on top of that choir, I put this, which I believe is that Westwood library. Oh, no, okay. So for this, I used Audio Imperial. Oh, yeah, I remember. The Jaeger library, because it's got this really beautiful instrument, which is this vocals by Merith Soldvet. Pronouncing that wrong, which is... I adore the sound of that. And I find layering that on top of a wider choir can just give it some realism and some life, because the choirs in Omnisphere are great, but they're quite clinical sounding, if that's the right word. So putting this little lead line on top, I find that brings a lot of life to it. Without it. With. And one thing I did here, which I don't normally do, is I've got the guitar on the right side doing some lower root notes in the chords. They're just normal bar chords, I'm pretty sure. But you can hear it's got the low. Da. And then what I did on the left side, which isn't something I normally do, because I find if you've got like the low notes on one side and you don't have on the other, sometimes it can sound like weighted off to one side, but I really liked how it sounded here. So I've got higher chords on the left side. And these lead parts, I'm pretty sure I just improvised. So following similar paths, but little variations here and there just to create little details that keeps it fresh sounding for your ear holes. And that's it, you guys. So a lot going on, but nothing crazy. Each section is kind of its own little theme. And within that section, kind of what you'd expect, really. Nothing really out of left field. But I think everything has its place and everything works well and gels together cohesively and delivers a sonic package that I find satisfying to hear. It was a lot of fun making it, and just seeing Modern and Massive 2 come together has been a privilege and a joy, and I really hope you guys are loving it as much as we are and have loved putting it together. I think it's pretty next level and game changing for a lot of reasons that Nolly outlines in the walkthrough that you can see on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't yet, head over to ggg.co for more information and to pick it up if you want to. So thanks very much, guys. I'll be seeing you next time.